Welcome to the Domain Name Law Show. We're here every Tuesday, noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. I'm one of your hosts, Todd Ryan. There's three of us, David Michaels and Jeffrey Neuman. I start by saying hello to my co-hosts. Hey, David, how's everything going today?
All right.
Okay, stop there, please. Thank you. And Jeff, what's going on with you today? What's up?
Hey guys, I just can hear you now. I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, you seem like when you came in there, first your audio was on. It's just sound okay right now. Well, great. We'll jump right into it. I want to say hi to all of our guests. Thanks for joining us every Tuesday. Exhilarating times talking about domain name law. Keep in mind, if you have a question, and this includes Ragu too, if you have a question about domain name law or anything that's happening in your world that's related to legal issues and domain names, raise your hand. We'll bring you up. Once we get through our cases, we usually go through a little bit of news, review some UDRP decisions, and then I think we're going to have time today to talk about any issues or really anything related to domain names and potential legal issues. I have a topic on our outline. It's not really legal related, but sometimes we just touch on industry news. And if you check out our outline at dnlshow.com, that's like domain name law, dnlshow.com, you can click on outline, or you can just go to dnlshow.com/outline, and you'll see our outline for today. I have a few news articles. One of them was that started off was about Radix, that's how I pronounce it, reports their best 6 months stretch of premium domain registrations to date. Now, I got this from DN Journal, but there's also, Radix has their own report, and you can take a look at that, search it. But anyway, I have the link to DN Journal. And basically, it's just saying that, yeah, there's, all these names with premium registrations that they have tons of stuff that are available, but they make some pretty good money off of these registrations. It looks like .fun had 600 and shows 666 excuse me, um, registrations, and I'm assuming that means premium registrations because are all of them premium? I guess I should have tried to learn this beforehand. But the second was 600 registrations by the .tech TLD. So I'm assuming this means registrations, premium registrations that are above the normal registration cost, which I don't even know what that is. David, do you know anything about premium registrations with .fun, .tech, .online? Are there, I mean, I'm assuming there's
Well,
a
I
certain
have some
sector.
.tech names, and they are expensive to renew. I've been keeping it for like a decade, but sometimes I don't know if I should keep on renewing them. But yeah, other than that, I don't know anything.
Yeah, they're on sale now as an initial registration. They're on sale for well, if you go to Pork Bun, it's 875, but renews at 4686. It's pretty specific. So yeah, about $50 to renew. Um, yeah, so that would be and .fun um, is about 26 bucks to renew, 27, but
Wow.
only $2.50 for a regular name. So yeah, these are true premiums, and they say in the article that they did 32 registrations at $5,000 a year, 10 at 10,000 a year, and a single character .tech registration at 25,000 a year. And they say the renewals are at the same cost as the registration.
Yeah. So I did see that, Jeff, and thanks for bringing it up. So we're talking about registrations that are premium registrations, like Jeff said, 32 that they had were 5,000 or more than the 10,000, and then also 25,000. They had it broken down. So I wasn't certain if they call a premium registration. Some of them might be just 300, let's say. But long story short is they're talking about registries, and Radix has these extensions of making money off the premium. And off these premium registrations, and then of course renewals. I was looking at one was, oh, they were saying that 95% of all these premiums are available, so it's pretty exciting. You know, they're taken in the .com, but you can still get them in .tech or .fun or .store. So I checked X.store. They said was one of the ones available, and it looked like X.store was, you can you can register it for like 6 or 7 grand, and then the renewal's 24 grand. And we Jeff,
Oh, it gets better.
yeah,
I just looked up, which actually happens to be a brand, right? V.Tech.
yep.
And V.Tech is 13 is on sale. It's half price for the first year. It's $13,646.25. And Pork Bun is charging per year, renews at 27,291. So remember, the wholesale price that they say in the DN Journal is just what the registry charges, but the registrar obviously marks it up. So my guess is that if they're selling, the $25,000, yeah, what they said for a single letter is 25,000, and then um, Pork Bun's marking it up. I don't even know what other registrars would charge for that.
Bet.site. So I checked Dynadot. Bet.site is one that they have available. It's 27,500 to register, and that's the same for the renewal, 27,500. So what we're talking about here is we're talking about, well, Radix came out with a list of saying, hey, we're doing well with these premium registrations. So they're the registry. They run, they own, or I guess own and operate these extensions. Jeff, do you know, do they actually own all of these extensions, or they just have agreements with the businesses that own them, or do you know?
Well, I don't know. All I can tell you is that they've acquired the rights to a lot of these. Yeah, they had a few, and I can't remember if .site and .tech were, but I know .fun they acquired from someone else. Um, so yeah, some are ones that they applied for and have had, and some are ones that they either by contract or purchased the rights to.
Yeah, and people, David, I'm curious your thoughts on this. That some people, anyway, when I say some people, I guess people that aren't domain investors like to say, yeah, this keeps squatters away from, the domains. When you have these premium registration prices and these premium renewals, it's really set up so if you're an end user, if you're a company that plans on using these names, a few $1,000, I guess even 20,000, 27,000 is not backbreaking because you're the big business that needs bet.site. But uh, I think, I mean, well, what are your thoughts on owning an extension and then having a lot of the names reserved for premium pricing registration?
I think that's just a new version of cyber squatting. I don't think I would sell betsite.com for more than $5,000, and then there's like a $10 a year renewal fee. So why should they get, how much did you say per year for bet.site?
It was 27,500 at Dynadot. And the reason I go to Dynadot, and I'm sure I always like Pork Bun for that reason, and Jeff's looking for, because Dynadot said at the beginning of the year, Todd, their CEO, said, we're going to have minimal markup on all registrations. We're just going to add a small number. Whatever we get it for wholesale that we can offer, whatever we have to pay for it, we're just going to add the minimal amount. So I just believe him. So when I go there and register anything, I'm assuming Todd's only adding in a very small amount to the wholesale price. I know Pork Bun uh, has always done the same thing. Um, Basically had very little markup, so it's great for new registrations. And then I guess anyway, so 27,500 for bet.site. Funny that you say so. Betsite.com, I probably would have mid five figures. I know some people would say that's six figures because betting is so big, but I agree with you that bet.site is, anyway. Bet is the key word. I'm certain in almost every TLD, bet is a premium, of course, like pay, and um, you know, I don't know. Go ahead.
I wanna challenge David. Just to ask you, why is it cyber squatting when a registry puts out a high price, but it's okay for a registrant that registers it to sell it for a lot more?
Well, when they're putting a $27,000 renewal fee on a trademark term, that's that's a lot. Like, it's different if it's a generic term or if the name was registered before, but this is registered after the trademark existed. So this is a new registry since 2013 or 2012 or whatever. So these brands pre-existed.
Yeah, but
Like,
you can use it for purposes that aren't squatting, right? So
well,
in other words,
yeah, but
so basically what I'm saying is registrars have been capitalizing on DropCatch names, charging and auctioning them off and getting all the proceeds. And registries have been stuck just getting, a regular registration renewal fee. Um, why is it okay for registrars to do, but not for a registry?
so tell me, what is a legitimate use case I can use v.tech for? Because at 13,600 a year, I'm at a loss as to like, we know that there's only one company in the world that can get away with using that. It's pretty specific. Unless there are more companies, I just haven't done the research.
Well,
Well, why couldn't any company that's in technology that starts with a V use v.tech?
Okay, well, I'll take your challenge. Just go to open corporates and see how many companies there are that use the phrase V Tech in their name.
No, no, well, no. That is a tech company that starts with the letter V.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So they would have to have like that. So that's how I sort it.
well, Dave, why couldn't a bicycle company use V.Tech?
Or
Those,
an adult adult toys.
V for virtual, V for anything really, but V.Tech. So you could just use it in other classes, I guess. And anyway, VTech, what is that? That's not that car company, is it? That offers cars? That's something. That's WeatherTech. I
no,
don't
V
know.
Tech is like those nanny cam things that you use to spy on your either your baby or your nanny.
I don't know if VTech's a great example, but David, I do agree with you that there's. I'm sure, Jeff, there are some extensions. I think we were looking at what was we got some cases to go through, but there was like a case. I forget. It was like Dunkin' Donuts, but it was a Dunkin' coffee, I believe. But anyway, when the left and the right, the SLD and the TLD really are a product, and it's almost like no one, there's no there's no way around it. I can't think of some better examples right now. But if someone, uh, you know, so there's a new extension, especially in this next round. So there's a new extension, and should the registry restrict or prevent anyone from registering? Do the registrars never have done that, but do registries ever prevent someone from, drink.coca-cola? I mean, bottom line is registries, they're basically the same as registrars. Anything goes. They don't restrict anything. They have this sunrise time where the trademark owners can get it, but after that, isn't that
So by the way, um, VTech.global is a company that compounds veterinary medicine. So there are plenty of uses. Anyway, I mean that's the debate. Some people don't like registries selling premium names, but and registries used to not do that, like Com and Net and Org and whatever. But then the registrars, the secondary market develops, and the registrars are taking control of it, and they're making thousands of dollars off of, the asset that starts at the registry. And so I think it's kind of a natural reaction. Well, if registrars are going to do it, then why do the registries have to always charge just a small price?
against my better judgment, I invited Ragu up here now instead of at the end. Okay, but Ragu, did you have something to comment right on this topic?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Thank you very much. And I knew it. My sense was telling me I would be the first one to ask. And this is the one of the question. And thank you very much to bringing me up. So, Jeff, I was going to ask. I asked this question yesterday with a bunch of us sitting together, and exactly the same question what you just asked David and Sumit from India. And I consider him a very knowledgeable person. And he told me very clearly and bluntly, saying, "Oh, that's registry or registrar. They have the rights to sell it on a higher price initially, and then the game starts after that." And I didn't agree with that. And I'm so surprised you brought the same question to David. And I was not satisfied with that answer. And David um, diplomatically answered you. So I am so concerned about that as well. Why the registrar or registry, or I don't know the difference between registrar and registry, whatever, is allowed to set the price whatever they want initially. Who gave them a right to do that? And I think it's something to do with their ICANN policy, the way they allow registrars to play their game and recover their expense or money or profit. Now, this question still remain the same for me. So I'm really looking for this answer. That's one thing. And the second thing, which I'll just say quickly, Jeff, Todd, and David, I'm very interested because I'm the argumental guy all the time. I like to talk, people say negatively, but my devil advocates always waken in me and talking, even though I agree with a lot of things which in a business practice, but I would like to have argues and I want to learn this business, what you guys are expert is, how I can do this, which is become expert in this, this subject. I need some help because I want in my free time I want to learn these techniques. What you guys know all about it. Thank you.
Yeah, so first, the difference between a registry and a registrar. I always kind of start with the registrar just because it's easy. Registrar ends in an R, and you think of them as most of them as kind of the retailer, right? They're the ones that interact with the consumer and sell the registrations. Now, some of them, a lot of them do it through resellers as well, but just in a simple model, the registrar is responsible for the retail sale of the domain. The registry is the one that actually provides the service, right? The registry is the one that takes the name and the information, including the name servers, and puts them into the root zone so that names can actually resolve, right? So the registry is the entity that, think of them as like a wholesaler. And then the registrar, again, just ignoring resellers for a moment, the registrar is the one that is responsible and they're the ones that take in the sales. Um, so there's no regulations from ICANN that regulate pricing for any TLD other than .com and .net at this point. And that's because of legacy reasons. And of course, .com's got, um, you know, is so large compared to everything else that you could say it's got market dominance, right? So other than that, no other TLD has any regulation as to what it charges as an initial price or renewal, except the fact that you cannot raise pricing without 6 months of notice for any renewal. You can raise prices for new registrations as much as you want with 30 days notice, but for renewal, you have to give 6 months notice. This allows existing registrants to renew the names at the current lower price. Um,
Yeah, the only problem with that, Jeff,
yeah,
is that the rule only requires the registries to notify the registrars of 6 months notice. There is no duty for the registrars to notify the registrants.
yeah, I agree with you, right? And I think that's wrong. And you know, but that's just not something in the registrar accreditation agreement. Um, but I totally agree with you that the registrars should pass on, not the same day necessarily, but certainly within a very reasonable time after they get notice, so that registrants have notice. I agree with you on that. I think a lot of registrars fall down on the job there, but there's a lot for them to monitor too. Registries are consistently changing pricing, and there's a lot of TLDs out there.
Well,
But the question of that I've always raised in my head, and it's, why is it that registrars by contract can claim ownership of names, they don't call it ownership, if a registrant doesn't renew the name, right? Why doesn't it go back like it used to, straight to the registry? There's nothing that says that registrars can actually do this. And again, there's nothing saying that they couldn't do it. But, registrars like GoDaddy and others basically take the position that if you let it expire, you assign it to me as a registrar. I get to sell it for whatever I can sell it for at an auction, and I, the registrar, get to keep 100% of the proceeds minus the renewal fee that goes to the registry. Nothing goes to the registrant when the registrar sells it. Registrar disclaims all liability by saying, "Oh, we're not really the owner. We're just selling it and keeping 100% of the profit, but we're not really the owner of the name." Yeah, there's a lot that I believe personally should be tackled because I don't think names belong to a registrar. Names belong to a registrant. And
I
if
agree
the
with you.
registrant, yeah,
I agree with you. And you know what? Epic is the only registrar that I know of that actually compensates the registrants. So I inadvertently dropped a domain name last month. It sold on Name Liquidate yesterday for $51, and they took 9% commission, and I got the balance.
that's
I didn't.
much more fair. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Well, the name was worth a lot more than $50 to me, but you know what? In the end, I figured I can upgrade. I can get a better version of that.
Right. Well, you dropped it, so you wouldn't have gotten anything absent what the registrar did, right? The registrar could have, in theory, should have let it drop to the registry, giving everyone a fair and equal shot at it. But that's not the way it works now. Registrars make millions, tens of millions of dollars. I don't know what GoDaddy, I used to know, but certainly tens of millions of dollars auctioning off names, claiming they have no ownership in it,
Yeah,
yet they got 100% of the revenue.
yeah.
Hold
That's
on, we're going to
totally,
get to Arif.
totally
Ragu, I wanted to
not
say
good.
thanks that the registrar, REGISTRAR, like Jeff said, that's the more the retail. Remember, registration, renewal. So that's who, and Jeff, that's who keeps it in their account. So VeriSign is the registry for .com, but you might register the .com at Namecheap, and then Namecheap is sort of custodializing your, is the registrar for that, or GoDaddy. So when it does expire, I can understand how the registrar is like, listen, we're housing this horse, we're housing this name before, we will give it back to the registry if no one wants it prior to that final day. So
But what gives them the right to do that? The registrant's the one that gets the right through the registry. Yes, they go through a registrar to place an order, but there's nothing that gives a registrar any kind of right to
well, like Eric's
say,
going to
well, I
mention
can take ownership.
right now about that timeline probably, but also mention about they are finding a loophole in this. And I'm going to throw it to you, Arif, but don't say thanks for name liquidate. You actually had conversations with Rob and that whole thing, and that's what came about. We believe you, but fucking, I mean that But Arif, the floor is yours. Thanks for joining.
Looking at ways to attract new customers and domainers, right? So that's a good thing to do. If every registrar did that, people would be more incentivized to go there if they got a cut from the expiration stream. It's yeah. I with Jeff saying, like, it's not necessarily legal, but it's also not necessarily illegal either, right? A lot of these rules were created in a time when, I guess, the ICANN and the original people sort of putting regulations to the internet didn't really foresee like an aftermarket or whatever it was, right? So they wrote the rules, and they just kind of evolved over that, and the demand for domains just went up and up and up. And now we're in a place where, yeah, drop domains actually have value. Whereas before, in the early 90s, probably never thought about that, right? So that's a consequence of it. And I think that's going back to the other issue with, that we were talking about with ICANN, with the NGTLDs. It's, ICANN kind of in one way wants to completely absolve themselves of any judgment, right? Like in an ideal world, a bid for a TLD wouldn't just be monetary, right? It would be like, what are your plans for it? What sort of rules you have in place? What kind of pricing you want to put on it? And then, a group would come and make a judgment on the different applications. But at the same time, then the problem becomes, well, who makes a judgment call, right? And that's like, well, what's worth how much versus the bid versus this versus that? And then that's, I think, what ICANN wants to kind of absolve themselves for. We do have like the community program, right, where there, some communities can come in and try to make a bid and they get preferential treatment, but that's really one aspect. It could be others. It could be like, okay, not really an official community, but a group of people who just want to do something and keep the prices cheap. Let's say they guarantee and keep it at $10, and then other group comes in and doesn't make that guarantee. Well, maybe the group that guarantees $10 is given a more favorable sort of advantage in getting the TLD. But again, how do you judge it? And plus, also when it comes down to like with .net and .com, especially .com, right? Like that contract was given to VeriSign, right? They didn't bid on it at all, so they're the caretakers of it. Versus these other ones, they're bidding at it and they're putting money into it, and they're expect to make some profit from it. And the problem is that some of these TLDs, they end up with much fewer registrations than they think they did, and therefore, are they expected to operate at a loss, or are they allowed to adjust their prices, right? I mean, I do think there should be, sort of barriers into how much you can increase over time. Like, once a year, maybe the maximum 20% or 30%, which is still sizable in one sense. If your registry is in financial trouble, you can still increase it quite a bit, but it's still not like abusive where it's $10 today and then tomorrow it's gonna be $150, right? Which has happened, but pretty rare in fairness, but it still has happened. So yeah.
Raghu, thanks, Eric. Did you get your question answered? Because a registry can, say, hey, all
Partially,
of our names
yes,
are
thank you.
100,000.
Yeah, I got that. But Jeff, since you're a member of ICA, is anything like this ICA is planning to listen to us, something like this? I'm willing to contribute something to lobby this and get to the bottom of this. And but same time, I've been told GoDaddy is a sponsor, or I don't know what it's called, to ICA as well, and it is conflict there. And I really don't know how the ICA policies and like what their options are for us investors. And I've been told it's there for us to protect all this stuff. And if anything can be done through ICA, or they are just not interested?
Let me comment real fast before. First of all, you've pussyfooted around. You could have been supporting ICA for a long time, and you act like now you're you don't know. You're feeling it out. Well, I was going to say, Raghu, yes, as a domain investor, we can certainly say, hey, first of all, it's like, what extension are you wanting to invest in that's too expensive? Because there's going to be plenty that you're going to think, no, that's fine. They can charge 20,000 per domain name, per registration, and 20,000 per renewal, because it's maybe .corp, or it's something that they're, .music. There's going to be some TLD owners that own a string that say, we have this solely for these lawyers. So if you're not a lawyer, you can't even get this extension. Or if you're not a realtor, you can't even get this extension. So that is really just another, I would say, a restriction on, just like a pricing restriction, that then would you want to go in and say, as a domain investor, we want the ICA, who just happens to be our organization that there's only one in the business. You want the ICA to say, hey, the .law, we're domain investors. We want to invest in .law or .legal. So we want you to rally or lobby for us to reach out to this, the registry for .law, and tell them, we don't want you to have this restriction where it must be lawyers. We want any domain investor. So what I'm getting at is, right, domain investors have some rights to some things, but so do registries, so do registrars. And the ICA is a domain industry organization. Believe it, Nat and Zach and the whole board really finally comes to that agreement that, yeah, you guys don't like it. We want the domain investors. Me personally, I want us to have a big say, and we like when they lobbied that VeriSign can't increase .com registration renewals or registration prices more than a certain amount per year. Good, stay on top of that with ICANN. But with regards to, basically, there's just so many fights that domain investors want. Lower commission here. Can you force a registrar to lower the commission? Can we force? No, there's going to be all sorts of things you can't force to happen. But as a group of domain investors, members of the ICA, I've always felt like we can sure first make our voice known to GoDaddy. We're not happy about that commission structure or that penalization for not using your servers, or to that registry for, we band together for these prices and these renewal prices. But yeah, so ICA,
Yeah,
Ragu, we do
well,
stuff like that.
and I think there's a difference again between put aside.com, net, org, whatever. The new GTLDs, each new TLD is a new product, right? And you can't control the pricing of new products, no matter how much you want it, right? I really want those damn Apple glasses, but gosh, they're like $3,000, right? What the hell? Why can't it just be, as much as an iPhone or less? I can't do that. And if I can't afford it and I don't like it, I don't get it, right? So no matter how much you like a .site or .tech or .love or whatever it is, .hip hop, if it's out of your price range, you just don't buy it. When you're talking about renewals, however, that's after you've already bought it once, and you need I agree, there protections are needed to make sure that you don't jack it up, the huge amount, but there is that 6 month kind of window with, what David said, even though the registries provide 6 months, the registrars don't. I think that's kind of something that could be discussed at the ICA, is to try to figure out ways to lobby for registrars to send notices of price increases um, within a reasonable time after that's something I think that you could do at the ICA. But I don't think there's a way that you will ever be able to, through anyone, not to get someone to go after registries for charging an exorbitant registration price. Um,
Yeah. The way
just
the analogy I always like to use is people who kind of don't get it is like when it comes to transportation, right? .com, .org, .net, they're the foundation that the world kind of set in place for everybody to use in a fair way. It's like mass transit, right? Taking the bus or the subway, you pay for basically what it costs, and sometimes there's external funding or whatever it is, about what it is. And then on the other side, you have people who have other cars, their Teslas, their Ferraris, or a lower budget car, whatever it is, and that's the NGTLDs and the other extensions. Man, it's your choice to get them, right? But there should still always be the foundation that's available to people at reasonable prices, like .com or whatever it is. And in fairness, a lot of the NGTLDs are actually even cheaper than .coms and sometimes, right?
Here,
And
we
so
have so
it
much to
can
go
be
through
done.
today. I'm going to give Ragu the last word real fast here, but if we
Yeah.
have
I
room
know
at
you
the
have a
end, we'll
long
talk.
topic.
But Ragu,
Yeah, I'm
No, but
sorry.
I just want to say one quick thing about the ICA is that when it comes to the scope of what they do, right? I 2 years now in a row, I stood up at the meeting and I made it very clear that there's things in the industry that we should, without getting details what they are, but there are things that we should look into and question, and not in an accusational way, but just to see what's going on. And there's things we need to look at. And finally, this last one was pushed back originally. But I was told that we were have some sessions where everybody could participate and talk about what the scope of the ICA should be. Now we're probably 6 months later after they told me that, and nothing's happened. So we shall see. But the intent was there. So hopefully, if you guys want to get and anybody not participating in the ICA and want to, there will hopefully be a window where things that you care about in the industry could be on the table to be discussed, right? And whether GoDaddy there or anybody else is there, that's totally fine. When Jeff stood up after me and said, yeah, as long as there's no, party in conflict, well, any party in conflict should just step aside from any decisions, whatever it is. But for me, I think VeriSign should be a member of the ICA, right? And in exactly that capacity that Jeff says, if there's things that come up for .com pricing, well, they set aside, but still there could be good things that come of it. When I went to the ICA meeting last January, I had discussions with the guys from GoDaddy. They do care about their product. They do want to make things better, and they do listen. That doesn't always show up in the results, but it's small steps sometimes. Anyways, I'll let you guys finish that.
Yeah, Jeff, I want to say one more thing, and then I think we should continue because you have a long topics to cover. Arif, for you too, one thing I'm going to comment on your practice. I remember talking to you about it. You have no complaints about expiring domains or picking up a closeouts. I do have a problem with that, and this is what I want to brought it up again. Is I remember back in days with the pool.com, and I think GoDaddy was taking back orders, and whoever come first get it, and then this other expiry domains organization came up and start auctioning it, even though you back order, and they will still put it in the public, who are never back ordered this domain name, and they were able to auction it. Before was only if, let's say, 3 people back ordered, the 3 people are fighting and bidding and getting this domain name. Even going to that basics, I was up to there was fine, but now it's all messed up. Everybody's taking advantage of this expiry domain names and all this, having a multiple companies opened up just to grab this domain and auction it up and make thousands and millions of dollars. Even that is, I have a big concern. This has to go back to the zone and dropped and come back, and then
Yeah,
getting,
there are some
yeah.
legal things there, but I think maybe we could push this to Thursday, Todd, unless you want to talk about it now.
That's
But
right. No, that's what I was going to say. First of all, Ragu, so we let it drop. Then you're going to have the companies that have all the tech, the equipment, the
yeah,
registrars out there, basically the network who gets it on the drop. So it's just delaying it a little bit, but some people may like that. So yes, on Thursday, we're going to talk about domain investing, all topics, welcome, open discussion, come up on stage. Then it's much more appropriate. Here, we like to do the talk, the questions, legal questions at the end, but I'm the one that brought up this topic. No problem. So, put my gun away back in my desk. I'm just kidding. I don't have a firearm. So I was going to blow my brains out there. Okay, so we have.
yeah. But Jeff does have a point with that, like what gives him the right. But we'll push that to another day or
Yeah, I mean,
Thursday, whatever.
but thanks
It's
for.
a good topic. It is a good topic.
Yeah, Jesus, let me. Oh no, Ace wants to come up here now. So, Ace, I know, I met him at downtown at D3 because it's so crazy. Ace, did you want to chime in real fast? Go ahead. You can see my frustration. Nice to have you. What's up?
Hey, Todd. No, this is an awesome space, no matter the topic. Yeah, no worries. I know, but I did have a question regarding like the legal topics and stuff like that. If that's cool.
Yeah, while you're here, do it. Do it now, and we'll
Yes.
see what happens. If we can answer it, we'll answer it. If not, we'll push it to the end. But Ace, it is a pleasure having you here. Go ahead.
Right back at you. Yeah, hello everyone. Al Elawar here, but friends call me Ace. And definitely made a good friend downtown LA with Todd. And yeah, man, I can't believe that August is practically over. I feel like domains is everything right now. I mean, everything. And so, yeah, I had met Todd at an event he was speaking at, and there I decided I need to make an X account. Seriously. You guys gave immense insight, you-ish, everyone. I had Twitter before as a realtor, a Clubhouse account where I'm convinced, Todd, you and I, we met before, but I mention all this because my first post here on X was teslasdiner.com. I don't know if you remember that conversation. Tesla's Diner, or Elon and them opened up the Tesla Diner here in LA. We had went over there, ate, enjoyed it, and my team and I, we specialize in 3D websites. So before the UDRP thing that you shared with me, Todd, we did that whole thing that I shared with you, and so. If Jeff and David have a chance to shed some insight like that, because the whole idea was to gift it to Elon, right? It's like, hey, this is a great engineering design. Here you go. Here's a gift. But I just want to know if I'm like pulling the tail of a T-Rex here. Like, is it going to be, they're going to bite us in the neck? Like, what do you guys think?
So he has a domain.
When you
Go ahead,
say,
Jeff.
well, when you say a gift, what are you talking? Like selling it just for the regular registration price
No, not
or
even.
free?
Yeah, literally, it's just Elon Musk. You know, it's just from one nerd to another. It's like teslasdiner.com. I'm here on X, like telling him, like, just tell me how to give it to you. Yeah, that's it. I mean, if the guy tweets back and he's like, "Cool," that'd be a thumbs up. But even that's asking for a lot. But no, really, like, I just wanted to be like, "Here you go." I tried doing it
Yeah.
on my page. You can see it.
Well, I think if they I don't know. I don't know if Tesla's one of those companies that just files a UDRP without even like trying to contact the registrant, but or if they contact the registrant. But if you told them, "Hey, got it for you," I'm sure they would not. You, I don't think they would go after you. But I'm not their attorneys. I would hope that they,
Right.
do what's best for their client, which is really just to get the name. And if you're giving it to them for free, I can't imagine them coming after you, but they might. And if they do, then you just say, I don't contest this UDRP, and here you go. I mean,
Basically, you would just sit and wait for them to give you a UDRP, huh?
well, I think you've tried to contact them telling it's for free, and if they're not reaching out to you,
Just hang
that
out.
means they're not interested, and you let it drop, I guess, after the year.
Hmm.
David, do you have any
It's because
comments? Because
Todd
I
comes in,
certainly
because
do.
Todd would probably say most time we don't care.
David, do you have any
Right?
comments?
Yeah, generally it's a bad practice to do that. Nobody gets rewarded for doing that. They always get a UDRP. Even if you say it's not contested, it's still a strike against you. So no good deed goes unpunished in that sense. So what I would do is not register for somebody else for free. Um, that and offer to give it to them because you're actually trying to get something returned, which is their attention. And some people think that's extortion, but I don't know. Elon doesn't like domain names. He dropped thousands. He dropped various versions of Twitter. So maybe he just doesn't care. But in general, don't do it.
Yeah, Ace, let me say, so if you own Tesla Diner Review, something like that, and you're like, that's one of our businesses, we review restaurants, and we have hundreds of names. Our main name might be this, and then we have all sorts of different, maybe somebody else's mark, like Tesla Diner plus Review. To own just Tesla's Diner, a lot of people own. I have friends that own SeanPenn.com or a friend that owns AndyWarhol.com. You can own someone else's, say, name or someone else's mark, but when many times they're not interested in, hey, I want to give it to you. And the risk you run is, sure, Jeff mentioned, if it's a UDRP, then you can just say, I didn't register with bad intentions. I registered it to gift to them. And in a UDRP, likely a panelist would say, all right, transfer. It's, you can transfer it to them. They'll hopefully, share you their information, and they probably, through the complaint, their resolution is for you to transfer it to them. So if you agree to, it really should all work out. And then David mentioned it could still be a bad mark for you. The negative really could be, well, it happened to me. I had Yao1111.com. There was no UDRP. Yao Ming just filed a ACPA case against me. That's bad because then you have to answer. You don't answer, you could be penalized 100 grand, by default, and potential attorney fees. So when you're messing with somebody else's trademark, sure, the UDRP for us domainers, it's a godsend really, because if you have made a mistake and you registered a name, even if it's not in bad faith, it can be confused that way. And David brought up a good point. Sometimes did you just want their attention? What was the intention at all? It could be considered bad faith. And then, of course, now you're mixed up when, a potential lawsuit. It's much worse. The UDRP, fantastic. We love those because you could just give the name away. But yeah, I remember you mentioning it, and you really just get yourself in, a jar of trouble. Any other final questions about that?
Yeah, because it was the time of events. Like I said, August was full of some really cool updates and insights. As you know, they're doing a bunch of major events. The World Cup, the Olympics, all that stuff is coming to LA. And as mentioned, our team, they specialize in 3D websites. So we captured it with the drone, all that fun stuff. And instead of hosting it on our subdomain and showcasing it like that, it was just attached to Tesla's diner, where you guys had mentioned, hey, uh, it could look really bad because you're, even though it's a gift, you're directing them straight to the Tesla's diner. You know what I mean? You're not even trying to claim it's something else. So even as a gift, I appreciate it, David, Jeff, for your guys' insights, because yeah, we don't want to get marked for anything
Yeah. Well,
at
Ace,
all.
thanks for joining us. And I'm sure
Appreciate
Arif
it.
was chomping at the bit saying, "Yeah, you don't want to use Olympics. Believe it. Olympics, World Cup, you use those in a domain name, you're
Uh-huh.
asking for it." Now, if you're somebody who is really slick and you got some attorneys on your side and you're using it in some fair use manner, or you really can't have news sites. We were talking about Elizabeth Taylor here a couple weeks ago, a website, elizabethtaylor.ai. You can have news about Elizabeth Taylor if it was solely about her. There's ways to do it legally, but you really have to, in many cases, you have to show that you've taken some action in that direction and that you are using it, and it's better if it's non-commercial and so on. And you got to be careful if you're doing news. It starts as non-commercial, then you start accepting ad money. So it's just, every case is different. We're going to get onto our cases here today. I wanted to say next week we have some great cases. I already have them written down. There's morganstanley.ai that I can't wait to discuss next week, sro.com, movi.com, and dirtyharry.com. Warner Brothers was the complainant in that case. Interesting cases and domain, in the cases today, I'm already going to give away something. None of the domain owners responded in our three cases today. Now, before we get to our three cases, there was one in the news that I want to really throw to David, and that is there was a domain name blockearner.com that we're not going to review completely, but there was I believe it was a Domain Gang article that was talking about Block Earner. Let me see. Yeah, Domain Gang. And it was the domain owner won the name Block Earner in a DropCatch auction, and then this Australian company named Block Earner went after him in a UDRP. David, tell us a little bit about this case.
So one of the people, the DropCatch option was the complainant, supposedly. And the complainant had applied to register the trademark Block Earner in Australia as crypto services in September 2021. And then a couple of months later, we have the auction of DropCatch, and it closes around, what was it, $4,000? But the complainant dropped out of the auction. He could have won it at that point, but he didn't. And he just decided, I'll just get more trademarks, spend money on trademarks, and then use the UDRP to get the name. Well, that's just stupid. That's theft. So anyway, there was no legitimate, like there was no trademark rights in the name at the time of registration, and it was dropped by the previous registrant on December 7th, December 9th. It was won by the respondent, and he paid like 4,000 and change for it. The complaint didn't like the fact that, the initial offer through the GoDaddy negotiation was $95,000 for the price of the name, because he thought, that's too much for Block Earner. Well, a lot of two-word names sell for a lot more, so it's definitely not material. Now, he didn't have any rights in it globally. Sure, there were a couple other trademarks with Earner in it and Block in it. He was probably the first, but it wasn't a registered trademark, and it wasn't in the United States. It was just in Australia and a pending application that could have gone nowhere, and nobody cares about those things. But it was a drop name, and it had backlinks, so it was worth something to somebody. What do
Yeah.
you guys think?
Well, this case, they end up reaching out to the domain owner, and the domain owner, through a broker, responded 95,000, and that's what set off the complainant. it was way above what you spent on the name. Well, in this case, and like I said, it's not one we're going to go into detail on. It was just a news article that I saw, but the panelists did say block and earner are two generic words together. They actually have a little bit of meaning. This guy um, didn't target the complainant when he picked up the name. At least there was no evidence to show that he did, and the panelists didn't believe that he did. And there was even some comment, I believe, by Theo at Domain Gang saying, I believe this could have been an RDNH because it really was a plan B. But Jeff, why do you think there was no ruling of reverse domain name hijacking, even though the complainant was unhappy with, the $95,000 price that he was quoted after losing the DropCatch auction?
Well, just knowing some of the panelists, I think you know it was just. I mean, there's some that are judgment calls, and yes, they didn't want to pay the amount. Yes, they bid on the secondary market, but um, it just depends on the panelists as to whether it was bad faith. It could have gone either way, in my view.
Yeah. We're going to get to our cases. Now, we have 3 cases today we wanted to review. These are recent UDRP cases. I wanted to mention one thing quickly, and that is on Thursday, we do the DNX show. That's Josh, Reason, and myself. We talk about domain investing. We have a ton of topics this week. I keep writing down, and unfortunately for this room, most topics are more appropriate in a domain investing conversation where we can really get into it and we spend 2 hours there. Here we try to go 60 to 90 minutes. Of course, we're already in at 52 minutes, and we got our 3 cases ahead of us, so we usually go closer to 90 here. But so on Thursday, please join us 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern for the DNX show. Immediately following on Thursday at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, my friends at D3, Fred, is going to interview Richard Lau. If you don't know who Richard Lau is, the legendary, I just say seasoned, well-known, been in the business a long time, domain investor. Richard really founded NamesCon, and he did that so people would, domainers, instead of asking domainers to donate to Water School, which is an organization that he helps, that he founded, that helps, communities around the world, a lot in Africa, get clean drinking water. Well, he, instead of just saying, hey, friends, donate, let's put on this event, and the proceeds of the event will go to Water School. So that's how he started NamesCon. But Richard he sold resume.com to, I think, Indeed. He just owns some great names. Logo.com, he still operates, but a fantastic domain investor, connected. Now he's really more of an advisor, and he works on, a lot of companies. So he's very knowledgeable. But anyway, so that's going to be at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, right after the DNX show on Thursday. So Fred's going to be interviewing Richard Lau, but primarily it's going to be about the domain hockey.com and tokenizing hockey.com to make it available so domain investors who maybe can't afford a domain like that, a single word, can invest in fractional ownership. But they're going to be talking about the technology, doing it, tokenizing it on the DOMA protocol, and what that means for hockey.com, but what that means for others who want to tokenize their domain names. So it's really going to be interesting conversation with the seasoned, very experienced domain investor who is taking say a premium domain out of his portfolio and doing what a lot of us likely will be doing in the future, tokenizing it and making it available for fractional ownership, but to take maybe loans against the name and so on. So you can check my timeline. You'll see the link there. I believe you can go to or check out DOMA Protocol too. It's a username here on X, and you can find the link. But that's going to be interesting. So Thursday, a bunch of domain talk and then some domain tech talk. I expect you all to be there. Okay, our first case today is dollartree.com, dollertree.com. And I'm not going to give away a lot here. It's these cases today, I think, pretty simple. But interesting, this domain, DOLLERTREE.com, of course, is a misspell of the word dollar, and the domain was registered in 2002 in October. Now, the complainant in this case, Dollar Tree stores, okay, I'm sure a lot of you go there, they're out of DC, but they, Dollar Tree stores, matter of fact, babe, we need some Epsom salt. Got to go to Dollar Tree later. Okay, she's right behind me. So, domain versus domain admin out of Panama. So I'm suspecting, I don't know, probably a parking company out of Panama or maybe a big time domain investor. But uh, this strikes me as a parking company name because names that really do well with parking are names just like this, that a misspelling of a trademark. But keep in mind, and David, you brought it up, money tree. That's a common term, a money tree. So that's when I first saw DOLLERTREE. I thought I can see having some rights to that. It's like money tree, Dollar Tree. Unfortunately, the respondent, the domain owner, did not reply in this case. But David, pretty thin case with regards to the summary. But what are your thoughts on it?
It's interesting. Look at the trademark history for Dollar Tree. And I don't remember seeing them in the 90s when I was in California. So I guess they were just starting out. They weren't that big. So I don't even know if they had like wide notoriety in 2002, but somebody knew about them. So yeah, so like in 2004, like there are very few Google searches for Dollar Tree. I'm just looking at the history of it. Let me check the US specifically. But yeah, so it's 23 years registration. They've had it parked. It makes money with PPC links that are hard coded, so it's not JavaScript. And that's important, so it gets past ad blockers. But this little domain name made money, so I guess money does grow on trees. The real money tree grows fruit, and it's like a nut, high protein nut from South Asia, I believe. So you can have those on your counter and eat those fruits and nuts. But yeah, so I'm looking at Google Trends in the United States from 2004 to the present, and it really wasn't well known until about 2010. Before that, it was a little known dollar store. So
Yeah, it was a little regional store. And Jeff, I want to ask you, so DOLLERTREE.com is the disputed domain we're talking about. The complainant Dollar Tree that we know was, trademarked the stores in 1993. But like David said, they didn't become popular till about 10, 15 years ago. Okay, that's when they were really every place. And then there's also, I think, a Dollar General and then the 99-cent store. So Dollar Tree must have been around since 93, doesn't mean it was popular. But Jeff, knowing this domain was registered in 2002, and okay, the respondent didn't reply, the complainant, or I'm sorry, the panelist in this case, Sandra Franklin, is, from what I recall reading her cases, notoriously on the side of the trademark owner. So she ruled to transfer this name away. She said, right, this company who was under domain admin, we don't know who the registrant was, must transfer the domain away because they did register it in bad faith. But we really didn't see the evidence that showed that it was in bad faith, this registration. So, as a panelist, how would you have looked at this knowing that the respondent did not reply? Was there a chance you would have ruled for them to keep the domain name?
Well, I mean, I think this is, you can make all the arguments you want of money tree is uh, generic or descriptive or whatever. But first of all, the respondent didn't bother responding. And if you look at the links, I mean, they link to dollar with an AR tree stuff. So it's clear that it's being used in bad faith. What I would probably do, and I just, because I'm sort of trying to have a little vacation, I didn't do, is go on to Internet Archive and see how it was being used back in 2002, 2003. And if there were references to the dollar store, regardless, I mean, it would have been like case closed, right? So it's just a pay-per-click link site. I'm just doing it now. Not necessarily. It's So they're making money off the traffic. Um, and then it seems like I'm just trying to look at 2007, they did a major update. So that may have been when they started pointing to the store. I probably would have found, yeah, at that point, Dollar Store is the number one link on in 2007. So I probably would have found bad faith.
Yeah, and without the respondent giving evidence of, look, when I registered this in 2002 for the first several years, let's say, I was using it for this. Now I have PPC links. Sure, I can't, I don't even, control them. So it may be used in bad faith, but it wasn't registered in bad faith. They'd have to provide some evidence of that. And I agree that as a panelist, Jeff, it's not your job to build a case for the domain owner. Like, let me try to help you out and see if you were doing anything that was legitimate or bona fide early on. So without them answering, I can certainly see why it would be a transfer. And yeah, I was thinking Money Tree when I was reading the case. I was thinking, is Dollar Tree, is that generic? Do we used to call it? And it was right. It was a Money Tree that was a term used, and then Dollar Tree really only came into popularity after they called the stores Dollar Tree. So I think you know I think this was probably typo squatting. But anyway, if it wasn't, this is
By
a
the way,
classic case you need to answer back. Go ahead.
okay, archive.org screenshot from 2003, in January 2003, just shows a directory of gambling, shopping, computers, finance, travel, beauty, just like the top searches on the web, and just hard-coded links to each of these categories.
Yeah,
So
if you had products that were $1 or less from a wide variety of places, or some, I mean, I could, possibly think, but there would need to be a solid answer, and you'd have to show similar names that you own. Something, there'd have to be a good answer, and there was no answer at all. Uh, any last words on that one, Jeff, or no?
No.
Done. Okay, hey, let's go to the next case. So that was a transfer. Dollar Tree, DOLLERTREE.com was transferred, and it was a 23-year-old domain name. Like I said, probably, well, that parking company probably made plenty of money off of it, plenty of dough over the years, I would guess. People don't know that's not how you spell it. They went there and they click on some of those links, and that's all it takes for the parking company to make some money. EdwardsHonda.com. Interesting case here. Well, I'll tell you, I like Alan Limberry. He's the panelist on this case and our next case. And I already gave away that there was no response. Um, there was no response on either of these next two cases. And Alan, he plays golf right now on Wednesday mornings in Australia. He's from Australia, so that was his reason for saying he never shows up here. Actually, he's like, Todd, um, talked with you plenty. I don't need to hear of you. Okay, so this case Alan ruled on. He was a solo panelist. EdwardsHonda.com, and spelled just like you think. It was registered back in 2012. Very interesting. So this name, or the complainant in this case, was America Honda Motors out of California here, and the registrant of the domain name was Bob Edwards. So that was his last name, Edwards, out of Iowa. He registered Edwards Honda in 2012, and so the panelist Alan ruled, hey, okay, Honda does have, you are using their mark, but so we'll give them that, the first prong. They do have standing to file this UDRP, but um, when he was going to the second prong of, does this person have a legitimate interest or rights to use this domain, since Bob Edwards didn't respond, Alan ruled that the complainant, Honda, made their case. I'm going to go with their case. As I say it every week, a prima facie case. So they made a case saying this guy, really doesn't have a right to this domain name. He's not known by the name. He's not using it in a legitimate way or anything. And since Bob Edwards didn't respond, Alan said, I'm going to go ahead and say that the complainant was successful at showing the domain owner doesn't have a right to this. But unusual here, we get to the third prong, which is, was this name registered in bad faith? And to go to you first, Jeff. Okay, so Alan made a argument about whether or not, or basically decided on whether or not this was a bad faith registration. Explain your thoughts on Alan's analysis of whether or not this was bad faith registration or not.
Yeah, so this site was not being used, right? There was no active website. So the analysis then turns to, well, passive use, I mean, or non-use, can be bad faith if, and this is in the I almost said Tesla, the Telstra case, which says that essentially that it can be passive use can be bad faith if it's a famous mark and it's essentially inconceivable that there are other uses for this domain name that would not essentially infringe on the complainant. And, this surprised me a little bit, but, Alan kind of said, well, I can conceive of ways that a respondent could use this name. Name's Edwards and he can own a Honda or a Honda dealership or whatever. And so Alan said no registration in bad faith, even if he's got no legitimate rights. So I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, and that's it. Just so happens that it sounds phonetically correct, like Edwards Honda, as if it's a possessive noun. But this domain actually was used back in 2014. It was forwarded to powersportsnetwork.com, and on there they were talking about various ATVs and watercraft, including some Honda vehicles. So I guess that was the connection. This guy was involved in the industry for motorcycles and ATVs, and Honda does make motorcycles, so that's the connection. So maybe he did plan on becoming a Honda dealer. He just never got the dealership. So it's plausible that he did actually have a bona fide intent to use it and just didn't get around to. And eventually that Power Sports Network site died.
Yeah, and look, the panelist chosen makes a difference in this case. Like if Sandra Franklin or Dawn Osborne or some others were the panelists, this case would absolutely have gone the other way.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%.
Yeah, no, and I think what Alan did here was say, like, not that what David mentioned, it's plausible that this guy um, is saying that he has the name because he's saying it's Edwards Honda. And there was even a comment that, yeah, but it would be if his first name was Edward and then, you missed the part, Edwards Honda. But Edwards Honda, sure, if he owned a dealership, well, he, like David did some research, he did have some connection to motorsports. And if he would have answered, I'm assuming that that would have been part of the answer, that at this point, not now, but at that point earlier on in 2014, I was, I was using a Honda machine and Honda equipment, and that's why we had Edwards Honda. But um, Alan bringing up that it's possible he could have just said it's like possessive, Edwards Honda. This is my Honda. I have a domain name. I think the reason Alan went with that is because there was just no evidence to show that he registered it in bad faith. So that was the most important thing, that what evidence do you have that the domain was registered with the intent to, cause problems, either keep the trademark owner from being able to utilize the name, targeting the trademark owner by trying to sell it to him, or one of those things. There's other ways that you can target as well, but the point is, so there was just no evidence to show that the registration was in bad faith. So as David mentioned, it's unusual. The panelist Alan did say, okay, Honda does have a trademark. Two, they did successfully show that this registrant has not doesn't have a bona fide use because they didn't show that they did. But yet he did say there's no proof that it was registered in bad faith, and we normally don't see those. Normally, like this next case, they skip over legitimate interest, proving that point, because usually it's easier to show it was just flat out registered in bad faith or not. So anyway, so that was a complaint denied. Edwards Honda, Bob Edwards, got to keep the domain name. And I'm sure that upset Honda, thinking they didn't even answer back. This guy has no relationship to us. We didn't authorize him to be a dealer, even if so, with nothing like that, why? But anyway, so Alan ruled in favor of the domain owner. This next case, our final case for today, profoot.com, PROFOOT.com. Domain was registered in 1998. Now, the complainant was saying that this has changed hands many times since 1998. So that was one of the complainant's things saying, and the complainant here is Tommy Cooper IP. Apparently they make some kind of insoles or something, but they've been around, they said, since 1986. A company that was using the term Profoot, manufacturing these, items, insoles or something in the shoe, since 1986. This company, Tommy Cooper IP, had acquired the trademark to it sometime later, but they were basically saying that there's common law rights going all the way back to 1986, and specifically even to 1996, which was supposedly a couple years before this registration. Once again, the complainant had a registered trademark in 2007. Doesn't come into play much here, but it was well after this registration date. But that's why the complainant was saying the respondent didn't acquire the disputed domain until after 2007, but they didn't have sufficient evidence to convince Alan Limberry, once again the same panelist, that this domain had changed hands. So Alan was using the 1998 date, saying they registered it in 1998. The respondent did not reply here, but there was no evidence of a common law mark back in the 90s. So you guys didn't have your registration until 2007. So Alan basically said there could have been no bad faith registration. I don't even have to rule on number 2 about whether they had legitimate rights to it or put it to a bona fide use, because you did not prove that they registered it in bad faith. And that's basically what made this case sort of simple for Alan to decide on. But David, any comments on this case? Any facts you want to share?
So I'm looking at the whois information on this domain name. So it still shows the mailing address for Care of Network Solutions, even though it's currently at GoDaddy. And it was registered or created on 1998, July 2nd. So I'm looking at the business registry names on Open Corporates, and there was a Profoot business registered in France on July 3rd, 1998. It expired a year ago, or 2 years ago, I should say. And so it was a long-standing business. I guess they just never used the domain name. But Profoot has been used by at least 60 different entities worldwide. It's associated with football, soccer, like the soccer version of football. So we call it soccer, but internationally it's all called football. So Profoot is a variation of that. So Profoot Acquisition is a common company name. Profoot Brazil, Profoot Inc. There's 2 of those in the United States. That must be a complainant. So yeah, it's a common term used. There is in Quebec a Profoot organization, association for soccer professionals. So yeah, it's there's no evidence of common law rights back then to the name or exclusive rights in that respect, even though they were selling or supposedly selling their insoles. What do you think, Jeff?
Yeah, it's the classic, you're going to make a statement, you got to prove it. If you're going to say that the domain was transferred a bunch of times, you have to show the records that it was transferred. If you're going to say you had common law rights, you got to show it. And, apparently, at least according to Alan, and we don't get to see the complaint and the evidence that was submitted, but, what we see is that they didn't prove it. Now, it's interesting because he goes on to say, well, the use now is bad faith, right? So again, you got to establish both registration and use in bad faith. And Alan said, yeah, it looks like it's bad faith now, but you didn't show me anything as to when uh, it was bad faith when it was registered. And that's, you got to show it. You got to say it, you got to show it.
Yeah, I think if this complainant would have shown that, hey, this name did have a change of
Todd?
ownership. Yeah, sorry. I said if this complainant would have shown this domain did change ownership here in 2022 or 2019 or just sometime more recent, and could show there was in fact a change of ownership without the respondent replying, would have had a much stronger case, possibly even got the name, even though us as domain investors know profoot.com is a cool name to own. It should have, like David mentioned, all these different uses, but the panelist is not going to know of all these different uses. Likely he may do some research, but usually they don't want to do research where that, it tips the scale one way or the other. So when you don't reply, basically this guy, this domain owner got lucky. That was who did I have it as? Oh, it was just listed as registrant. But this domain owner got lucky because the complainant didn't show that it did in fact have new ownership. It could have been just picked up a few years ago, and the guy picked it up, immediately put on some, pay-per-clicks that were infringing or basically were competing with the trademark owner. It could have easily been ruled that's you acquired it for bad faith. As soon as you got it, you put on some PPC clicks that were competing with them, diverting traffic, so it could have easily been lost, especially, like I said, when there's no reply. I'm hoping in the future that registrars assist a little bit more. I don't know, they are not at all in UDRPs of saying, hey, you did get this, help, basically let their customers know when a UDRP is filed that they reach out to the customer as well, to the domain owner, and say, you may have received an email, you weren't familiar with what it was, or you might have thought it was something that not real, or a spoof or something phishing you, when in fact it is a real case that's been filed against you, and you need to answer and even assist in, answering, like check boxes, that maybe could benefit you. But anyway, so I think we saw 3 cases today that the domain owners just didn't reply. Maybe in Dollar Tree they didn't want to. They usually, sometimes with parking companies, and I don't know who owned this, they make money over the years, and then off of a misspelled, off of a typo trademark, they make a bunch of money, and then when it's time, when someone files a UDRP against them, they just, they don't answer. They want it to be transferred, or they don't care because they know they've already made their money off of it. The others, I think the domain owners got lucky. Those were 2 complaint denied, and they didn't even respond. So I'll say quickly before we shut down, once again, next week, we have some interesting cases. I just couldn't add them today. We already had too much stuff. But MorganStanley.ai. Wait till you hear the defense in that case. And then SRO.com. Interesting 3-letter case. And you might think, well, how could someone think they could just go after SRO.com? So many different uses to it. And then MOVI.com. Great brandable. And that deals with domain investors who invest in brandables. What risks are they taking by investing in brandables that you may or may not know someone's using those letters, and it's popular somewhere else, maybe around the world. And then finally, dirtyharry.com, spelled Harry. No, anyway, like the Clint Eastwood. By the way, Warner Brothers is the complainant in that case. You'll be really surprised at the outcome of that case. I was a little PO'd at it too. But anyway, so those are 4 cases we're going to touch on next Tuesday. We sure hope you can be around. That's next Tuesday, same place, same time, just like the bat stuff. And that's right here, noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. I am going to say again, this Thursday, please join Josh and I for the DNX show. We're going to all things domain investing. We got a bunch of stuff we're going to talk about, some new products out there we're going to mention in the domain space. And that's for 2 hours, 10 a.m. Pacific to noon Pacific, and you can figure out the Eastern time. But then right after that, after we do that for a couple hours, Fred at D3 is going to be interviewing Richard Lau. It's going to be a great interview. He's going to be talking about hockey.com, which is one of Richard's domain names that they're tokenizing on the DOMA protocol, and they're going to tell us why they're tokenizing it, and with the plans for tokenizing other domains in the future, and just really what benefits that has for the domain owner. So a lot of us that are domain investors, if you ever thought about, you're hearing about all this, why would I tokenize my name? What restrictions does that put on my name? But what benefits do I get from it? And, is it something you want to, start checking out sooner or later? But so that's a bunch of stuff, good stuff on Thursday for domain investors. Once again, thanks for being here, everybody. That's going to do it for today. Thanks to my co-hosts, Jeff and David, and then thanks to Arif and Raghu for coming up here and joining us. We really appreciate it. Wherever you're at, have a good rest of your evening, morning, whatever. Take care.